I get it, you're scrolling through a dozen CNC routers, wondering if you should throw a few $100 at a machine that promises professional scale projects but might end up sitting in the garage collecting dust. I've been there, watching friends wrestle with tiny hobby-grade routers that just can't handle a 2-foot sheet of plywood, then seeing them splurge on a big-ticket unit that turns out to be more headache than helper. Before you decide whether the Genmitsu PROVerXL 2X2 is the right fit for your workshop, let's break down what it actually does in a real-world setting, where the value lives, and who will get the most bang for their buck. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. First off, the size. A 26.76 by 26.76 inch work envelope is a game changer if you're used to the 12-inch or 18-inch tables you see on entry-level kits. That extra real estate means you can load a full sheet of inch plywood, a standard MDF board, or even a modest piece of aluminum without having to cut it down first. In my own little shop, I've been able to carve a set of decorative wall panels for a client in a single run, something that would have required at least 2 passes on a smaller machine. The full-size material handling claim isn't just marketing fluff, it translates into less time refeeding and fewer alignment errors. The spindle is another point that people talk about a lot, and for good reason. At 710 watts, the motor can sustain higher cutting speeds on hardwoods and even light metals like aluminum or brass, provided you use the right bits. The dual collet system lets you switch between an inch and an inch collet without changing the whole spindle assembly, which saves a lot of downtime when you're switching between fine detail work and rough stock removal. I ran a test carving a 2-inch deep relief on a maple board, and the spindle held its temperature nicely, letting me finish the pass without the motor throttling back. That's a practical strength you'll notice when you move from hobby projects to small-scale production pieces. Now, the closed-loop stepper motor setup is where the PROVerXL tries to differentiate itself from the typical open-loop hobby routers. In plain English, closed loop means the machine can sense if a motor falls out of step and correct itself on the fly, reducing the chances of a botched cut that could ruin a piece of material. In everyday use, that translates to more reliable runs when you're tackling long, continuous cuts. Think routing a decorative edge around a 4 by 8 foot board. I've never seen a missed step on the PROVerXL so far, which is reassuring for anyone who's ever lost a weekend's work because a cheap router lost sync mid-cut. On the connectivity side, Genmitsu has added Wi-Fi and an app that lets you send codes straight from your phone or tablet. For people who love a clean desk and want to avoid a tangled mess of USB cables, that's a neat convenience. The app also offers a simple job queue interface, which is helpful when you're juggling several small pieces for a client. However, the app isn't a full replacement for a desktop controller if you need advanced features like real-time access monitoring or custom macros. If you're a power user who relies on a robust host software stack, you'll probably still want to plug the machine into a PC and run something like Fusion 360 or Lightburn. So who should actually consider buying this machine? If you're a maker who has outgrown the typical 12-inch hobby router, need to work with larger sheets of wood, and want the ability to dip into light metal work without buying a separate metal mill, the PROVerXL hits a sweet spot. It also makes sense for small business owners who need a dependable workhorse for low-volume production. Think custom signage, furniture inlays, or decorative panels. The closed-loop system and the larger work area together reduce the need for frequent resetup, which can translate into faster turnaround for paying customers. On the flip side, if you're just starting out, only plan to make occasional small trinkets, or have a very tight budget, the PROVerXL might feel like overkill. The price point sits above most entry-level kits, and the extra capabilities only become valuable when you actually need them. Also, keep in mind that while the machine can handle light aluminum, it isn't a dedicated metal mill. Cutting harder alloys or doing high-speed engraving on metal will quickly expose its limits, and you may need to invest in a more robust spindle or a dedicated cooling system, something the base package doesn't include. A practical weakness to be aware of is the rigidity of the frame when you push the limits of the work envelope. The aluminum extrusion construction is solid for most woodworking tasks, but when you try to push a large, heavy sheet of MDF to its far edges, you'll feel a slight flex. That flex can show up as a tiny deviation on long, straight cuts, especially if you're after tight tolerances. The solution is to use a sacrificial support board or add external bracing, but